The Medical Courier Connection podcast is brought to you by Risk Strategies. In a world full of risk, your insurance broker should understand the unique challenges you face in business and in life. We specialize in providing risk management, consulting, and insurance solutions designed to meet the specific needs of businesses and individuals. With deep knowledge spanning across more than 30 industries, we help protect what matters most with trusted advice, tailored solutions, and a proactive, consultative approach. This podcast is also brought to you by Key Software Systems. We believe that every delivery has a story, and it starts with you. That's why we built an ecosystem uniting accounting, delivery, tracking and shipping, reporting, and more to not only bring full delivery transparency to your customers, but to reduce errors and inefficiencies that stand in the way of over-delivering on customer expectations. We'll drive the heavy lifting that keeps your business innovative with the latest technology so that you can focus on building connections with your customers.
Hey everybody, hey everybody, hey everybody, hey everybody, Ken with Integrity Medical Courier Training.
We are providing on-site training in Roseville, Minnesota.
A man's digits turn blue due to too much cannabis use. A woman in Melbourne, Australia dies after being scratched by Minty, her cat. Stole the hearse and dumped the body on the side of the road, still strapped to the gurney, and then continued on with their joyride. A dog had to be put down after it was crushed by a package thrown over a garden fence, its owners claim. So, stay compliant, my friends. Get all your medical courier training needs from us at www.integritydelivers.com.
Welcome back to the Medical Courier Connection podcast. What's
Hello,
up, everybody?
hello.
Ken is far too sick for a podcast today, so, and it is in fact International Women's Month.
Woo woo.
Yeah. So today we have Carly Fliesher on the podcast. We're going to be talking a little bit with her. So I will read her bio real quick. Carly is the Senior Vice President of Enterprise Sales at OpenForce, where she plays a key role in supporting and scaling independent contractor-driven businesses across the country. With over a decade of experience in the fast-evolving world of last-mile delivery and e-commerce, she brings deep industry insight and a forward-thinking perspective on workforce solutions and operational excellence. In addition to her leadership at OpenForce, Carly serves as the Technology Chair for the Express Carriers Association, where she helps shape conversations around innovation and the future of logistics. She's also the author of The 13th Floor, How Dealing with Trauma Transformed My Approach to Employee Well-Being, a powerful work that reflects her passion for building healthier, more resilient workplace cultures. Carly's unique blend of industry expertise, leadership, and personal insight makes her an incredible voice in the logistics space, and we're honored to have her with us today. Welcome, Carly.
Hi, guys.
Yay.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for being
here.
Thank you. I'm excited to sit with two strong women during this month of International Women's, month, right?
Absolutely. Yep.
Yes, us too. All right, so tell us a little bit about your journey. What led you to write your book?
Yeah, so I was in the Vegas shooting back in 2017, and I was kind of naive. I would say I was naive at that time in the workplace, and coming out of that shooting, I think it just kind of changed my perspective on how I handled a lot of different situations in my life. Not just how I handled work situations, I think how I handled personal situations, my relationships and kids, and then also my direct reports. And then just seeing what people were going through. People weren't really talking about people suffering, I think, in general. And then COVID happened, right? So a lot of people were dealing with just internal traumas, and I feel like people weren't really seeing people for who they were or being kind to each other, and that EQ of empathy was going away. And so I think it was the opportunity for me, as I was telling my story of what I'd been through. People were saying, you should write a book about what you went through in the Vegas shooting. And I thought, that would be a cool book, but it would be 10 pages long. So maybe if I could somehow, and it ended up evolving into bigger, where, trauma is trauma and a lot of people go through it. But a lot of people don't have patience for it at times, you find. And so I decided, let's relate it to business and give people techniques and maybe a roadmap on how they can do better with it from a business standpoint, and maybe their personal lives too. So kind of that's what led me to write the book to that question.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love that. Perfect. What do you think trauma-informed leadership means?
For trauma-informed leadership, I think somebody who is truly, I think, in touch with knowing what their employees are going through and feeling and being aware. So, I have somebody who I was working with who just wasn't really themselves, right? Was kind of, before they were, let's say, showing up to a meeting, they were engaged, they were answering questions, and then all of a sudden one day it was kind of like they just seemed down. They were making faces in meetings, and pulling them aside and kind of saying, what's going on, and understanding like their demeanor and behavior just kind of one day changed. And it comes to find out, they were dealing with a lot internally from their father getting in a car accident. Somebody had passed away, right? So they were just dealing with a lot that I didn't know about. And I think being informed, meaning being aware and knowing that there's things changing within your team. And if things are changing and maybe they're showing up late, or, maybe something's happening that just wasn't happening before, and calling those out. So kind of being aware and informed that way. And then also, going out and knowing what's available to offer your employees. So knowing, what resources, and if you say the door's open, allowing that door to really be open. I mean, no one's perfect. I'm not perfect. Today, like, I don't stay up on all the trends or every resource that's available. I try to, and I meet people every day that have an offer to say, hey, I know something and I want to add it to my website. I have a website that goes with the book that I wrote, that I want to create a resource for. And I want to get better about getting people more help that's needed. And I think, to your question of being informed, it's, as a leader, what can I offer my team members in the way of a resource when I recognize that they're dealing with something, to help them? One, recognize it, but then two, give them something and not just say it's a box that I checked on the back end type of.
Right. I love that.
Yeah. I think the thing that really impressed me as I was reading through your book is that in the midst of your growth in leadership, you had all these barriers that hit you, but the shooting, even going back as far back as when you talked about how you had dyslexia as a child, and you really didn't find that win until that high school teacher said, you're doing it, you've got this, and giving you that encouragement. And then the shooting, and I mean, knowing that you were with DDI and then with Walmart and now with Open Force, and just watching you grow on that ladder while dealing with all that. Talk a little bit about that, how that's kind of made you the strong woman that you are today.
Yeah,
especially
I think
in the business world.
Yeah, thank you for calling that out. Like I feel like the dyslexia thing, it created a thing in me where my confidence level just wasn't there. And so going into business, I always questioned myself. And so I had a leader at DDI who he saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. And he would say, like, Carly, once you have confidence in yourself and you believe in yourself, you will be unstoppable, right? And you just have to kind of have a belief in yourself and a voice in yourself to say you can do this. And I always kind of relied on, I think, back to that high school teacher, it's like having a champion is, you need a champion regardless of who you are, regardless of what you're going through, and having that helps you get to that next stage. And once I went through the shooting and recognizing I had this confidence to get through other barriers and to keep going, and him recognizing that really helped me take that next step into my career. And I think also leaving, so I left DDI because I went through that shooting. I kind of looked at life differently. Like life is short. I could die at any time. You really, I came to an acceptance that I think my life was going to be over in that moment. And so I had another job opportunity present itself, and I was like, I'm not going to say no to things. And that's a part of grief too that you go through with trauma. And so I was like, let's see what this is about. And
Yeah.
that same person that I thought was my champion walked over and gave my direct report more equity in the business at that time. And I was like, whoa, I wanted that. Like, if you would have given me that, I would have probably stayed. You didn't fight for me where I thought you were a champion. And it kind of like made me question things. And so then to have them come back and say, hey, actually, we need you. That was a big shift in my career to say, I knew I was valuable. I knew it and I questioned it. And then I came back. Right.
Yeah.
And so I think it's just pivotal. Pivotal moments. I can't say the word in my career journey. And at a time where I think I needed those because, I lost my father during that too. So
yes. Yeah.
Going through all that was
and COVID. I mean, there was so much.
Yes.
Is that kind of where the whole mentorship idea in the book was born from?
Yeah. So I found out I was pregnant right after the shooting, and right after that lost my father, and I thought, what, I need something to focus on. And if not having a kid outside of that wasn't enough, I think, where can I put my energy? And going into Walmart right after the company I was working for sold to Walmart, it was like a crash of just so much. And so I saw a lot of, students. So Walmart takes a lot of students and they hire them as interns. And they had this mentorship program and they asked for mentees to come in, and I signed up for the mentee program and decided, let's just give it a whirl. I know this industry at this point a little bit, and a lot of them had the same type of issues in that. And so it was kind of like, how do I be respectful of my space, of my time? How do I get noticed for the work I'm doing? And anybody coming into this space, a lot of times that's what I struggled with as a woman, at least in this space. And two of the mentees were women that I dealt with, and they both had the exact same struggles, and they didn't even know it. I obviously met with them one-on-one. And so I think that's kind of where it came out of, as I wanted to start to educate young women and then anybody young coming into the space of how can you grow and where can you really start to make a difference, at least in the transportation industry and last mile. So
absolutely. The transportation industry is really tough. It's kind of been the good old boys for so long. I was so encouraged by your story about how you got into ECA and you kind of the relationship you had built with Mr. Luciani. And, I just think that is so encouraging for other women. The other thing too, that stood out for me, in your book, is you not only speak to the employees and how to help them, but you speak to it from a leadership standpoint. The story you told about in Walmart when there had been that shooting and they just sent a bunch of people in to clean up the mess, not really realizing what they were doing by doing that and how that was going to affect them. And I just sat there going, oh my God, like how many times in my career have I sent somebody in to do something without another thought, and nothing, of course, that extreme, but how did that affect them in in where they were? If they hesitated, did I think about that? And so that really connected with me.
Yeah, no, and that's a good point too. I mean, and in anything, it's kind of like, even if they didn't go through it, even maybe at that location, if they go through something, and I write about it in the book, it's, maybe setting something up for that employee for success in the office. Maybe now they're afraid of the entrances. So maybe you move their desk away from the entrance and put them further back, right? So it's knowing what might be triggering for that employee and to help them. And it's not saying, baby this person. It's saying, hey, let's set them up for success so you don't employee manage them out. We're trying to employee manage them in. And I really try to say, hey, I'm not saying like, let's let, people who are lazy get by. There's a clear difference in someone who's being lazy versus somebody who also was a hard worker and doing things in their career versus somebody who just wasn't ever showing up to begin with, type of thing. And maybe that person's also going through trauma. It's just they were never doing anything to begin with, type of.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think as a leader, it makes you connect with yourself first, because that's what I found myself doing looking back in my career. I was a manager of a real large courier service in Denver. We had 150 employees, and there were a couple of different things that occurred during that time. One of them was COVID. One of them was one of our bicycle couriers got hit by a car. And I watched the whole entire office kind of fall apart. Like, what do we do? It was almost like, nobody knew what to do. Who's her, how do we get a hold of her parents? How do we do this? How do we do that? What did she have? What did she have on board that we need to go get? I mean, it was a fiasco. And that day I said, we need a dispatch manual. And out of that was born one of the actual classes that we train is dispatch. Because from a dispatch perspective, you've got to have control and confidence in how to handle something when something happens. Some of the other things that you talked about, I loved that, just kind of redistributing workload a little bit to encourage those folks going through things. Maybe having counseling. I mean, we all should have some kind of health care in the workplace, meal trains, flexible scheduling. I loved all of the things about that you said were just wins, where I thought back at, as, like I said, and throughout my career too. And I went, that would have helped there. It really makes you kind of reflect on how you lead now. And, with our staff now, like, what can we do better? So,
it makes me honestly, like, it made me sad for who I was before too, of not showing up before, and also too, I mean, you will have to go through things to understand what people maybe were going through before. In general, it's like I always say, before I had kids, I would say I'm really tired, but you really don't know the level of tired until you have kids, right? So
that's the truth.
you kind of only know your own reality, but it's like I think Ken and I were talking about this at the CLDA. It's like before I went through what I went through, there was a one time when one of my friends had lost somebody really close to them, and I didn't reach out, and then I saw them later, and I said, I'm really sorry for what you're going through. I didn't reach out because I didn't want to bother you, and they said something that stuck with me is like, but yeah, you didn't reach out, and I wish you had. And it's like not reaching out and not saying something is, I think, worse than just not saying anything at all and not knowing what to say. So going forward and just saying, hey, I'm so sorry, or just sending that text goes a lot further than not, right? And feeling annoying, you may feel annoyed, you may not know what to say, but even just saying thinking of you is like goes further than nothing at all type of situation with that kind of thing. Just leave like
that is so true.
Yeah.
So. That's so true. I feel like, especially in like death and like a lot of women go through miscarriages and stuff, and no one really wants to touch on it, because we don't really know what to say. Are we going to say the wrong thing? But yeah, you're right. I think not saying anything at all is worse than possibly saying the wrong thing, because then you just didn't,
Well, and a lot of times people will say like, well, I have, and to me, they say it, and I actually like don't like when they say it because it's like, they'll say, well, I haven't been through as much trauma as you. And I'm like, whoa, like trauma is trauma. Like just because I maybe went through a shooting, that is very traumatic. Yes. But like you may have been through something that gave you that exact feeling of freeze, fight, or flight that you'll never forget. And that is traumatic. And let's talk about it like that. Like just because you think that your trauma isn't as traumatic, I still want to hear about it. And I think it's still worth talking about. Right. And so I think people like will not tell me about something because now they think, well, it's not worth talking about because yours, it's like, it's not a competition type, and that's also why I wanted to write the book, is because I feel like once somebody here, and don't get me wrong, we all kind of do it. Like I had an employee who went through some crazy crazy trauma, and like here's me like leveling that up, right? I'm saying like they went through I would say way more trauma than I've ever gone through in my life, but
Wow.
it's trauma, right? Like, and they thought mine was more than theirs, and it's kind of like subjective, right? So so it's like, let's have a floor to talk about it, and not be scared to open it up and go through that, and to not keep like belaboring the point. I'm having a hard time with my words today.
It's Friday. You've got to pass.
But like when I talk to military, with what I went through, a lot of them relate, because they'll tell me like, they went through a lot of trauma going overseas, being in Iraq or Iran and stuff like that. But they were trained to be shot at. So they think that, they should be prepared for it, where I wasn't trained to be shot at. But it's funny when I talk with them, and the feelings that I had and that I write about in the book, they had those feelings that I went through that night during what they went through in battle, or in where they were, right? And so it's kind of crazy how much I can relate to them in their stories when they're talking about things. So like we can relate on the level of trauma when I talk to them. So
yeah, that makes sense. Wow.
Yeah.
And like you said, what the worst thing that someone has gone through isn't more or less than what the worst thing that someone else has gone through. It's still the worst thing that they've gone through,
Yeah.
So I always tell people that too. It's like, it's not, like you said, it's not a competition.
Yeah. Yeah. It's true. That's fair. And you guys probably have a lot of, with Integrity Medical, I would have to assume, just seeing the introduction that Ken does, that's some really sad stuff, like having to put a dog down because it was crushed by a package. Like that's traumatic. So
absolutely.
Like, and if you have to see that, and you're walking, like, and if you're the delivery person doing that, like that's a reason for them to go through training, right? Like you don't want to don't put yourself in trauma.
Right.
I'd rather
Absolutely.
not put myself in trauma. So let's not. So let's take a course. So I'm going to put a plug here to take some courses for Integrity Medical, so I don't have to put myself through additional trauma.
I love it. That's perfect.
Yeah. I'm curious. So everything about what you said is excellent from a corporate standpoint. I mean, there's so many things to, for managers and owners of companies to look at. From an IC 1099 company, how can they have that same effect with their workforce when they're not actual employees? What do you have like recommendations for them?
No, that's a really good question. And, something I lately have been thinking more about, and not something that I've thought so much about in the past, which, shame on me, I guess, in a little way, but for companies that we work with, and something that I do suggest for people who have ICs, I still think that they should have some kind of resource manual, not like a training manual, but when they bring them on board, an orientation, I call it orientation manual, because that's something you can kind of have in the way that's better suited in the eyes of the state. But it has resources of like, if they go through something, who they can call, if they are in danger. And now I also work with partnerships, and I used to set up partnerships where if they want to have partnerships with companies that they can provide these ICs when they're in danger, that they can instantly tap at a button that like notifies somebody. So we partner with like, I forget the company name now, it's off the top of my head, but it's something 7 Solutions, but they wear it around their neck. And if they go into a grocery store, they tap this button, let's say shooting's happening, they can tap the button and instantly alerts I'm having such a hard time with my words. It alerts the police, right? And they're on their way, that they're in a crisis. We also have remote security solutions, who I'm a good Lee. I write about him in the book. He's a Apache helicopter pilot, but he runs remote security solutions, and they have security cameras up around every dock. But it's partnering with companies to allow these ICs to have at the click of a button to notify that they're in danger, and or in their app, or applications, resources to gain access to call somebody if they need a counselor or if they need to, a resource that they can reach out to, right? So we have our marketplace. We do have Integrity Medical if they want to go through classes. We have, some other resources for safety that ICs can take advantage of on the OpenForce platform. But I highly suggest other companies, if they have apps, to have some kind of resource links for safety. So tap here if you're in danger. And I'm sure Uber and Lyft, I know they have things like that. I mean, for passengers, they do. So I would assume that they have for drivers, right? Like I'm in danger, tap here, things like that. But definitely should add things for counselors or, websites that they can download to read or books and resources. That was very long-winded. I apologize on.
That's amazing.
Yeah. I know that one of the things that I have is it's just admin recommendations, but I've written it kind of in such a way that a small company or an independent contractor can glean from some good things from that. But one of the things I really push is disaster mitigation. And people think disaster, hurricane, things like that. But no, it can be you just lost a family member. It can be my car just broke down and it's going to be out of commission for 2 weeks and I have no idea how I'm going to work now. I mean, there are so many things that fall into that category. For everybody, I think it might be a little bit different. Of course, some of the bigger ones are the same, but people need to think through, how would I manage this? What would I do? Which makes me think about one of the things that you said. There was an example of, you said a safety compliance chief safety officer. They wrote about it, but they never tested it. And when they tested it, they were like, oh my gosh, we didn't think about this hallway was perfect. The other one was too narrow. And where are we going to put handicapped people who need a platform on the fire escape and all of these different things? And I was like, yeah, how would you know that unless you actually practiced it? Yeah. And so I love that you include that, but that goes for you as an individual, and that goes for a whole entire company with 1,000 employees in the building or more. I mean, I think, I really loved everything you said in the book. That it's just disaster and trauma and all of that is part of our lives. It might not be today, but and I think you said it's not when, or it's not if, it's when. Yeah. So I think that was very insightful book for anybody to pick up.
Yeah, it's like in California, that's where I'm based out of, for those watching this. And it's like we practice earthquake drills, right? And it's in school, not so much in the workplace anymore, but you practice them growing up. So when it happens, you know exactly what to do. It's like in the workplace, why do we stop? And it's like we give our kids sunscreen that's protective of their skin. Why as adults do we stop these practices of protecting ourselves from disasters or from things that I hate to say it, but shootings are happening every day. I mean, I turn on the news, it's happening every day. Why are we not protecting ourselves and doing a plan of how do we protect ourselves? What exits are we going to take? How do you close the door? Use your laptop as a tool, right? So why are we not doing this every day? Once a month to say, this should just be something that we know how to do. My kid probably knows what to do, but we don't practice it, So
that is so true. Yeah. So drivers, maybe every stop on their route, they should know the emergency exits and where they can go and things they can do. And I love the button idea that you had, or the button that you guys use. If someone can just have that on their badge, on their lanyard, that would be amazing.
And to your point, I heard a story of a driver who was on route and he got out of his car to drop a package. He got in and he had a gun to his head from somebody, and he just got out. He was safe, but it's like that. It was very traumatic, right? And what do you do in that moment? And that his car, the Sprinter van was now taken. He's left alone. And they'd never practiced. This is what you do in this emergency. So if they were to practice it, it's like, okay, you go to the home, you call, ask if you can borrow someone's phone, call this number immediately. You know, like there's certain steps he could have taken if you would have known, or if you're in this situation, obviously hand it over. And he did that the right thing, didn't fight it. But it's just knowing what to do next.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I know we actually personally knew the UPS driver who years ago in Minnesota, gosh, it's been a long time now. He was pulled up to a doctor for a delivery, not knowing there was a shooting going on inside. And he did pass away. He got shot. And I mean, just this young dad, you know, couple kids, wife, and just about going about his business, doing his deliveries, had no idea what was going on inside that building, but there was no warning. It was, you know, and I don't know how you would warn something like that. I mean, they were going through enough inside the building. But yeah, it was that was a real wake up call, I think, for a lot of people in the transportation industry to take that seriously, that you just never know.
Well, to that point too, I think, I don't know if you heard about the Instacart one, and there was an Instacart shopper shopping in a grocery store that went live or pretty viral as well, that was shot at. And I think those two specific cases, it's like, and you knew that person, it's like those two got taken off pretty big. And so it's bringing more light into, these are ICs. How do we protect them? You know, they're people too. Just because they're ICs doesn't mean we just let them go and don't care. I mean, you got to care about people. And that's the thing too in the book. It's like, just because they're employees, you don't work them like a workhorse. You got to show empathy. You got to show that we care about people. It's, you know, at the end of the day, we all have lives too. We all have things happen to us. So to that. But yeah, to that point, you can't stop everything from happening, and you aren't going to be perfect in every situation. But I think, you know, knowing or having the right, you know, maybe it's having them have something, if you're a UPS driver, like a shield, I don't know, like a clipboard that's bulletproof. I don't know, I'm making things up at this point, but you never know what's realistic at this point. So
for
that's
sure.
So true.
And knowing that if that does happen, that there are people that are going to support you, and it doesn't have to, you can look at your what you're doing like you did and say, this is a good opportunity for me to step away and do something else, or, you know, and then use it to elevate the things that you're doing and just keep going on that. So, I love that.
Thank you. I love that you picked out some great examples in the book. So I appreciate you reading it.
Yeah. There were some really good ones. I've got pages of notes. And the book is very marked up.
Yeah, thank you. No, I know. I tell people, if they're going to get it and read it, like, please read at least the first 10 pages, because that is what happened to me in Vegas, the whole story. And that's a lot of times that people want to know. But then I'm like, there is still a lot of good content in there, I promise.
Yeah, there's a lot of good. I know I've got a note on the very first chapter. I said, initial thought, this is a lot. And then I would have to piece it, you know, and take it into slices. And then, like I said, it was so related. I was able to so relate to different things, not only in my life, but like, you know, Faith lost her husband a couple of years ago from cancer, and, you know, all the different things. Ken lost his mom during COVID. I mean, you know, when I was manager up at this service up in Denver, my mom passed away suddenly. I mean, so there's all these different things that I had not ever thought about, from, you know, how that affected my career, or how that affected how I dealt with other employees, how I managed, you know. And it was nice to think. I was doing an interview not too long ago with somebody, and there seems a little off, like a little standoffish. And I just stopped and I said, is everything okay? And she said, well, no, I just found out that one of my best friends from high school got killed he died. And I said, oh my God, would you like to reschedule this? We can totally do that. I don't want this. I don't want you to have to come up with answers to something. And it was like it was freeing for her. She said, she kind of took a breath and went, no, I think I'll be okay. And I think just me recognizing
Acknowledging.
that and giving her that freedom to step out if she needed to. Now, would I have done that 10 years ago? Maybe not.
Right.
So I loved that I was able to bring full circle in myself and how I manage how to look at all of these different things and then to relate to them as, you know, the majority, like 84% of the people we train are independent contractors. And how can we have them do that for themselves too? And so it's just, I think you've got so many more people that need this from just a me perspective, you know, how to manage my own self as my own little company.
Yeah,
So,
no, I appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah. And to that too, it's like, it makes me, when you hear people's stories too, it helps people open up to me, but it's like, a lot of people be like, oh, whoa, I didn't know that about you. Like, I just thought you were like a person who nothing really bad has happened to in life. And it's like, when you find out things about people, you look at them differently, right? It's like, they're a more real person. When you know they've been through things in life, you know that they can get, and also now, you know, like, it's like faith, like you lost your husband, right? It's like, you're such a strong person to have to go through that, especially like in anything, right? But it's like, now, you know, you're showing up, you got your kids, there's just, you look at somebody differently after you find things out, right? So
absolutely.
Just side note on top of like, to add to your note, Linda, with all of that.
Yeah,
it's
so true. You're right. You see more of their story and who they are and why they are the way that they are and things. Yeah, absolutely.
I hear a little girl outside of your room. Yes.
We'll have to have a kid podcast next. Let my daughter and her daughter go.
There you go.
That's so cute.
Yeah.
All right.
Let's see. I was just looking at Chris's notes to see if there's anything else. Faith, did you have anything else you wanted to cover?
I don't think so. What about you, Carly?
No, I think we covered most of it. I appreciate you guys, you know, having me on here and talking and through it. It was pretty good. I had a great time.
Good. Yes, I know. Me too. I'm so glad. Thank you so much for not only for writing this, but for coming on and for representing women who have, you know, gone through so much but succeeded. You're doing well. You're doing great things in the transportation industry. There's so many people, men and women, who have a huge amount of respect for you. And kudos to you.
Thank you. Yeah. And I guess I could say if people want to buy it, it's called The 13th Floor. It's on Amazon. You can buy it on Barnes and Noble, Walmart. And thank you. I should show it too. Yep. I forgot.
Me too.
Yes. And I just appreciate the opportunity to talk about it and everything today. So
absolutely.
And thank you guys enough
so much. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes. Have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you too.
Thank you.
Bye guys.
All right.
Bye.
So for shout out to our members on YouTube. This one's going to drop early for the members. So this will be today for our members watching on YouTube. And then the podcast will drop everywhere else on Monday morning.
Okay.
Monday the 30th. Yeah.
Right.
And if you want to listen to the podcast, you can hear it on Apple Podcasts, the Podbean app, Spotify, Amazon Music and Audible, iHeartRadio, Player FM, and Podchaser. And we will see you all next time.
Hey everybody, Ken with Integrity Medical Courier Training here.
And this is what's happening, right? So with such a serious subject, but he's able to inject humor. So it's in our best interest to invest not only in safety, but give some of those dividends back to the drivers.
I'm like, how do you start this medical courier stuff? And nobody had a mentorship. Nobody told me what industry events to go through.
So I was thinking, like, I need a name for my first conference. And it just dawned on me, use the name that they keep calling me. And I was like, yeah, the Boss Maker Conference.
You're learning so many important things, and I'm so proud of you.
Yeah, that sounds a bit expensive. I think I'll just train them myself. After all, this isn't rocket science.
And we have liftoff.